Welcome back to Unapologetically Visible. I'm your host, Christina Olivarez, award-winning visibility and leadership coach, TEDx speaker, and founder and CEO of the Social Butterfly Gal and Hustle and Socialize. And today we need to talk about something that I know is going to hit home for so many of you, and that is the problem with one-size-fits-all personal branding advice. Whew. If you have ever followed the tactical advice, downloaded all the templates, posted exactly what the gurus on Instagram were telling you to do, specifically around your social media and your personal brand, and you still feel invisible, stuck, or misaligned, this episode is for you. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into why cookie cutter personal branding advice is keeping so many of you stuck. We're also going to dive into the real costs of trying to fit yourself into someone else's mold and what to do instead. And I'm going to break down my signature framework that I use with all of my clients inside of my coaching containers in order to customize your personal brand experience. By the end of this episode, you are not only going to understand why you felt so frustrated with your personal branding, but you are going to know how to start building one that is unapologetically yours. So it seems these days that personal branding advice has become one of the noisiest industries on the internet. Every day, it seems like there is a new guru telling you about the new viral hack, especially when it comes to growing on LinkedIn or growing on Instagram. I think I've heard so many of you say social media is tiring. I need to post 3 to 5 times a week, especially on Reels, or it takes so much time to engage with my followers. And then you have to do step 1 and step 2 in order to see a big return. And I am telling you, that is just a bunch of BS. Now, while yes, the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, has always confirmed specific rubrics to follow, especially when it comes to enhancing your reach, visibility, and engagement. If you're not following him on Instagram, you definitely should be following him. But when you start looking to gurus or people on the internet who claim that they have found the secret hack or the secret formula for growth and virality, it starts stripping away the very thing that makes you magnetic. You see, people aren't following you because you stuck to a tactical hack. They're not following you because you are creating these videos and you're cranking them out because you are doing step 1 and 2 formula. They follow you and buy from you because of your lived experience, your identity, and your leadership voice. Too often, I see many of you focusing on the wrong things, like the number of followers that you have or your video views. If you're a content creator that's working and the sole purpose of creating content for other brands, there are specific metrics that a content creator needs to hit, especially with the brands that they're working with, to know if the campaign is a success. But if you are building a personal brand for yourself, or if you are a service-based business owner and influencing people's perceptions and buying habits through your content, then it shouldn't be about surface level, one size fits all approach. For high achieving Latina and women of color founders, the cost of surface level tactics goes deeper. When the tactics don't work, we don't just think, maybe the strategy was wrong. We start to think that maybe we're the problem. Maybe we need to start looking and sounding and acting like someone else. And we start feeding into the trends, thinking that anytime we do a specific trend on Instagram or TikTok, that it's going to lead us to getting more clients, more revenue, and more opportunities. And when we start feeding that cycle of self-doubt, it doesn't just cost us emotionally, it starts costing us financially. Because when your brand doesn't reflect who you really are, when you start playing into this version of perfectionism, a version that makes people feel like you are someone else, you start attracting misaligned clients and underpriced opportunities. You're constantly in burnout trying to keep up with the algorithm and also trying to keep up with an image that doesn't reflect who you really are at your core. That's the problem with one size fits all advice. It erases the brilliance that visibility was meant to amplify. Personal branding is about calibration. It's about creating a visibility strategy that is rooted in your identity, your lived experiences, your culture, your leadership style, and your nervous system. When I coach my clients, we don't start with what's the best posting schedule. We start with asking a series of questions like who you are at your core outside of your business performance. We start digging deep into parts of your story that you feel safe to share right now in this moment, and other parts that you feel are meant to be sacred. And we start actually getting down and deep into what people want to feel when they experience your brand, not just online, but also in person. Because when we lead with those questions, branding stops being about tactics and the algorithm, and it starts being about your truth. One of my clients came to me super exhausted. She had invested thousands of dollars in branding courses, templates. She even hired a designer who gave her this stunning, polished website. But every time she went to share her messaging online, she always froze. Her nervous system shut down, and she never really quite felt secure in her voice and her messaging. She came to me and said, Christina, while I know this brand looks super beautiful, especially online, it doesn't really feel like me. So in our coaching, we went back to the basics and we stripped away all of the tactics that she had learned from the gurus. And we started asking each other in these sessions that we were doing, when you imagine your brand as a room, what does it feel like? Who's in the room? What energy are you holding? And from there, we rebuilt her visibility strategy that was uniquely hers. She started showing up in ways that felt supernatural to her, especially when it came to her voice. And she was focusing more on raw writing and less polished. And the results and what happened was astonishing. She started signing her dream clients without even pushing or convincing, and she got invited onto podcasts and stages without pitching herself. For the first time in years, she said, I feel at peace with my brand and my messaging. And that's the difference between formula-driven personal branding and identity-driven personal branding. These tactics that you hear online, all the formulas, all the secret hacks, they weren't created for women like us. They were designed with a culture that is rooted on performance. So when we follow them, we end up muting our truth, and we usually hide bits and pieces of us that often feel like are too much. What gets rewarded is the watered down version of us and not the full version of us. The version of the things that the algorithm likes and the trends. And when you are chasing formulas, you are always in reaction mode. Instead of thinking, how can I show up for my audience and what do they need to hear? You start asking yourself, what are the latest trends and what does the algorithm want from me this week? And instead of building credibility, you're stuck in the hustle of keeping up with everyone else's rules, especially when it comes to the algorithm. This is exactly why I created my visibility to legacy framework. And I want to walk you through the first 4 phases of this framework so you can see the difference between surface level personal branding advice and identity rooted branding that creates real sustainable authority. In my framework, we always start with identity recalibration. This is about aligning your personal brand with who you are now and not who you were when you first started. As a seasoned business owner, you already have compiled a lot of data about your audience, your messaging, and even the content that you've already posted. You know what works, what doesn't work, and at your core, you already know where you need to let go and what you need to lean in. Now it's all about closing the gap because the brand that you created at the beginning of your journey was probably built from the tactical advice, such as chasing the algorithms. And you were often trying to prove and get people to pay attention to your content. But now you're not at that place anymore. You've grown and evolved as a business owner, and you've already built the clientele, the revenue, and the reputation. You've lived more life, and if your brand hasn't evolved with you, of course, it's going to feel misaligned. Identity recalibration is often asking yourself who you are today. What do you stand for? What is the actual pain that your audience is having, and how do you solve that pain? What conversations do you actually want to lead with? And when you align your brand with your current identity, suddenly you stop feeling like you're performing and you start feeling like you are embodying. The second phase is voice activation. This is where I help my clients unlock their natural magnetic way of messaging, speaking, writing, and showing up. So many of the women I coach have been told to water down their voice or to sound more professional and polished. They feel the misalignment with their messaging because of that nature. When you activate your voice, you stop trying to fit into the trends and you start creating more resonance. You show up with messaging that makes people stop scrolling because they feel like you are in their head. And you lead from a place of finding your own voice instead of looking elsewhere for it. I used to do this all the time, especially when Reels came out in 2021. I was constantly looking at other creators for inspiration around my messaging and my videos and mimicking their content because I knew that that's what the algorithm was wanting. Until I realized that the content that I was creating was not helping me get clients. And so I tapped into finding my own voice and leading from there. Then we move into authority building. Now, this is the part most one-size-fits-all advice completely skips. Authority building is about positioning yourself as the trusted leader in your industry, not just someone who's present, but someone who's credible. And that means asking yourself, what rooms do you really want to be a part of? When it comes to platforms, where are you showing up on? And who's co-signing your work? What conversations are you leading that others cannot ignore? Authority isn't about being the loudest or the one that has the most content. It's about being the most trusted. And when your visibility strategy is built around authority, clients don't just follow you, they start investing in you. And the last phase is leadership embodiment. This is where everything starts shifting because up until now, you've been probably operating with the algorithm in mind. You've been performing and proving and grinding and wondering how you can get the latest trends so that you could be top of mind. But with leadership embodiment, this is where you start shifting into who you are as a leader and the leadership styles and qualities that you have, plus your energy. This is where your online presence, from a leadership perspective, speaks louder than the trends and the performance that you're doing online. It's the difference between needing to prove your worth on every single post for the algorithm, knowing that your leadership energy and identity is already carrying weight. Remember, people want to know how you lead yourself in order to see if you can lead them. So hear me talk about the problem with one-size-fits-all personal branding advice. It's not just about tactics and what the gurus are saying. It's about what those tactics cost us. They keep us at surface level. And when we flip the script and build personal brands through identity recalibration, voice activation, authority building, and leadership embodiment, everything starts changing for us. I want to leave you with a few questions that will unlock the next level of your visibility. Question number 1, where have you been following someone else's formula instead of listening to yourself? Question number 2, what parts of your identity have you muted in order to look professional? Question number 3, if your brand felt like coming home and not like a performance, what would change for you tomorrow for your next post? If you resonated with this episode, here's what to do next. Subscribe and leave a review. This helps this podcast reach more women like us, women who never meant to stay hidden, women who meant to be highly visible leaders. Share this episode with someone who you love, who is constantly chasing the algorithm, and let them know that they don't have to anymore. And DM me on Instagram at the Social Butterfly Gal. Tell me your biggest reframe or breakthrough from today's conversation. If you're feeling the call to go deeper, to recalibrate your personal brand, leadership, and visibility, I love to support you through one-on-one coaching. I'll personally share how I can guide and walk alongside you and how my coaching containers will support you in your next season. I'll see you next week.